Doma Sports Talk worldwide with some news from the world of boxing. So y'all know what time it is. You ain't in a rush to get concussed. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the told you hat on, right? Unfortunately, because I told you. And we're going to talk about Canelo Alvarez and what he's going to do next, right? When I told you that John Ryder, when he beat Daniel Jacobs, right? And they stole the fight from Daniel Jacobs. I told you because John Ryder, they're grooming him to be Canelo's next opponent. I knew that, right? I also knew that when Demetrius Andrade didn't fight Zach Parker because they offered $185,000 for a purse bid that they were supposed to share amongst themselves, each other, a two-division champion, that was on purpose. So Demetrius Andrade won't take that fight. John steps in, John Ryder, and he takes that fight. If they would have let that fight be $3 million, and with Zach Parker and Demetrius Andrade would have took that fight, and he would have been the WBO mandatory, and we would have never seen Canelo fight against the WBO mandatory because it would have been Demetrius Andrade, right? That's why 185,000, and I told you that's why that was then. And Demetrius Andrade shouldn't be fighting for 120,000, and the other guy gets 60,000. I don't think any two-division champion, especially in glamour divisions like middleweight and junior middleweight and stuff like that, in those divisions, no, right? An American Olympian, undefeated, fighting for that price. But I know people don't care, right? But that's what I told you what was going to happen. That's why I told you a year and a half before that John Ryder was going to be his opponent, right? With Canelo. So, here's the deal. I've been saying of lately, Edgar Berlanga is who they got their eye on, right? Edgar Berlanga is the guy who's going to try to fight in September. I seen an article recently where they're mentioning him again. Kind of just mentioning him, putting out fillers for Edgar Berlanga, right? Making it sound like, well, he's coming from Puerto Rico. We can make a big fight with Edgar Berlanga and Canelo, Mexico, Puerto Rico, in New York, because Berlanga has a big fan base there, right? So that can happen. Berlanga's not a champion. Who has he fought? Are we going to ask him the names? He's not a champion. Who has he fought? He's looked lackluster in his last couple of fights. Those are things that would get you a Canelo fight. Looking lackluster in your last couple of fights. John Ryder, for example. Yildirim, for example. Trying to fight Mukabu, for example. Do you know those guys that I told you back through the door? Nobody that busts through the door gets a Canelo Alvarez fight. Dave Morrell, he's busting through the door. He ain't getting none. Dave Benavidez, busting through the door. Jamal Charlo of Demetrius Andrade, that door been broke down for 10 years now. For Demetrius, about 8 for Jamal Charlo. So those kind of guys are not going to get them. So those kind of guys we ask who they're going to fight. So Edgar Berlanga seems to be the right type of person that Canelo is going to want to fight. Now we're talking about his fan base in New York, right? Don't you think that Jamal Charlo has a fan base in Texas? And Canelo, don't you know that those people could fill up a stadium? And then again, I was your mandatory anyway, right? Now what they're going to say here is they're going to say, well, Canelo just fought his mandatory, so now he can have a voluntary. Well, he shouldn't know because there were mandatories that were there before, right? The WBC's mandatory, David Benavidez, was there before the WBO. The WBA's mandatory, the regular champion Morrell, was there way before. Now, and that brings me to my point. The WBA and the WBC, if Canelo tries to fight Berlanga, has to strip him. Must strip him. Ain't no discussing it. WBA, you're supposed to be consolidating your belts. In all these divisions, you're getting rid of the regular champions. The only division you don't do anything about is the 168-pound division because David Morrell's the champion, and you're trying to keep David Morrell away from Canelo by trying to force him to fight the WBC. Canelo's mandatory. 2 mandatories and 2 separate sanctioning bodies. They're trying to force them to fight and not Canelo. No, you're supposed to be forcing David Benavidez on Canelo. He's your mandatory WBC. David Morrell is your mandatory WBA. Make them force them Canelo to fight them. Not the WBO who just became the damn mandatory because he's the easiest one. Now, Edgar Berlanga has done nothing of late. Now, if he's supposed to fight Canelo, you know how it should be? Then Edgar Berlanga should be having a fight in May or June here against one of those guys. For example, Demetrius Andrade ain't doing nothing. Berlanga versus Andrade. So he can beat Andrade and shut him up, and then Canelo can fight somebody who has some momentum. Berlanga versus Canelo after he beats Demetrius Andrade, then you got to fight. Berlanga beats Morrell or Dave Benavidez, then you got to fight, right? But not Berlanga that just called me up the other day and had a split decision over me, and then all of a sudden he's going to get a Canelo fight. See what I'm saying? That ain't how it's going to happen. But those are the ones who gets the damn fight. So let's keep our eye on that. I'm telling y'all right now, it'll be a whole lot of Berlanga talk coming soon, because let's go make sure this is clear. Just like I told you before. What else did I tell you? Canelo is not going to want to fight Dimitri Bivol at 168 pounds. The reason being is because if he gets beat by my man at 168 pounds, the belts are gone. He's gone. Because he can't get a belt back at 168 pounds or 175 pounds without fighting somebody hard and having to fight somebody hard. Because he would have to go to WBA or WBC. You see, he can't get those. He mess around, then the Andrade's out there and stuff like that. So you would have to lose all your belts. Because Dimitri Bivol, he'll beat up Canelo at 168 pounds and vacate the belts. And to get those belts back, Canelo will have to go through somebody. So he's not going to do that. He's going to want to fight at 175 pounds, and I'm hoping Dimitri Bivol just says, I ain't fighting you. I'm holding on my guns. That's it. If you ain't fighting at 168, there's no reason to fight you because I beat the hell out of you at 175, and there's nothing to prove. This ain't just Canelo's legacy fighting. I'm fighting for legacy too. I beat the hell out of you at 175. My stipulation is that we fight at 168 so I can get some damn belts and take your undisputed championship status. And if Canelo don't want to do that, which I'm telling you he ain't, there's no way he's going to do that because he knows he's got a problem with Dimitri Bivol at 175 or 168. So he's not going to do that. Enter Edgar Berlanga in September. Remember, you heard it here. Doman Sports Talk Worldwide. And I'm up out of here, y'all.